أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. وأيضا قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today, inshallah, we're going to proceed with the subject of Mukhtar. And like I've said, it's not a traditional Mukhtarrama. I'm not going to list dates and times and places and all of these additional details. But what we're going to do is try and gauge lessons from the story of Mukhtar. For those of you who don't know a great deal about Mukhtar, there is a wonderful series from Islamic Republic of Iran, which discusses his life, his rise, all of the details in a fashion which is, in these days, much easier for people to get a hold of and understand. So, inshallah, maybe try and find that online. Unfortunately, it was on YouTube with English subtitles, but since then, some random companies have come along and made copyright claims, and I don't know, and the khulasa of the video is not there. But inshallah, I'm sure it's available on places like Shia TV. So continuing from yesterday, when we made a very brief start into the whole episode of Mukhtar, and we were just introducing him, and we'd already mentioned that the first person to give bay'ah to Muslim bin Aqil on behalf of to Imam Hussein via Muslim bin Aqil was Mukhtar, and that Muslim bin Aqil stayed in the house of Mukhtar. And I wanted to clarify one important thing. Mukhtar had a wife, her name was Amra, or Amra in some books. She was the daughter of one of the companions of Rasulullah, one of the members of the Ansar from Medina by the name of Nu'man ibn Bashir. Nu'man ibn Bashir was appointed as the governor of Kufa by Muawiyah, and he continued to be the governor of Kufa, through in the initial stages of Yazid's Khilafah, but then he was obviously deposed. Now, Nu'man bin Bashir was very, you can't really say apolitical, but he was very placid. He was very quiet. He was a quietist in that way, even though I don't like that term. He would try and just not cause problems, not make trouble, not have problems. He would try and be, friendly with everyone, which is, not always the worst thing, but sometimes it does cause you to compromise your principles. So when Nu'man ibn Bashir learnt of Mukhtar being the host for Muslim bin Aqil, after especially Muslim bin Aqil has made this speech, calling people and telling people that he's taking bay'ah and that Imam Hussein will be coming to Kufa, and so on and so forth. Of course, he became concerned because his loyalties to the Umayyad dynasty, to previously Muawiyah and now to Yazid. So he obviously doesn't want someone to come along and overthrow the regime there. So he calls Mukhtar and he tries to use his wife, who is a mu'mina. She's someone who loves Allah, who loves Ahlul Bayt, and tries to create a bit of emotional problems. So Mukhtar tells him something very, very interesting. Mukhtar tells him that you, who is a member of the Ansar, one of the close companions of Rasulullah, someone who has transmitted hadith, is it not shameful for you to be supporting and be supporting someone like Yazid and being against Imam al-Hussein? And of course, to this, Nu'man became very upset and very angry, and he said that I'm only trying to look out for myself and look out for my family, and I'm trying to make life easy for you. I don't want trouble for you. And this is an important point for us as well. So give me a salawat and we can try and continue. So this point, why is it important? You have someone who is essentially not a bad person. Nu'man bin Bashir, he's not someone who is evil. He's not like Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad or Umar ibn Sa'ad or people like this. But he is someone who is, I think the term in English is a little bit too pragmatic. He will do whatever it takes to stay in his position and to keep everyone happy. Now, you can't do that because that, by design, puts you in a position where you're compromising your principles. Sometimes you have to take a stance. So I'll give you an example that maybe we can all relate to. If you're in a situation, a group of friends, you've all gone out, and one of your friends decides, he meets another group of his friends, and he decides that they want to go clubbing, for example, just as an example. If you don't tell your friend not to do that and discourage him, I'm not saying use violence or anything crazy like that. No, I'm saying be firm and make your displeasure at this activity be known. Whoever doesn't do that, they haven't done their duty from the positions of, and we go back to the previous lectures, nahi anil munkar and amr bil ma'ruf. And so we have allowed ourselves to almost be complicit in the crime or sin that this friend of ours, who we love like our own brother, is doing. So, very important point. Sometimes we don't always get it. Sometimes people say that, well, it's his problem. What can I say? At the very least, you have to say something. You have to discharge your responsibility. If you're in a situation where, for example, people are actively doing something haram, but you do nothing about it. You sit around and you say, well, it's not my problem. I'm not going to get involved. This is someone else's problem. That is unacceptable from an Islamic perspective. We have to, without exception, enjoin the good and forbid the evil. Now, if it comes to a stage where you are certain that in enjoining the good and forbidding the evil in this context, you will bring about harm to yourself, then at the very least, oppose it inside your heart. And according to Imam al-Hussein, and I think some of the other ma'sumin as well, I can't remember the hadith exactly, the reference, this type of rejection, this type of nahi anil munkar is the lowest, but it's still valid. That doesn't absolve us. If, for example, your own brother is going to go and do something haram, it doesn't obscure you from saying to him, look, brother, I love you. You're my friend. You're mine. But you doing this is the problem. This takes you away from Allah. And so I need you not to do this. At that point, if he doesn't do it, he doesn't have a situation left where he can turn around on Yawm al-Qiyamah and say, oh, Allah, I didn't realize this was a bad thing, because the hujjah has been completed. And this leads back to Karbala, because in Karbala, we have to remember, multiple times, the people of Kufa who were ranked against Imam al-Hussein, they were saying to the people of Kufa, that do you realize who you've ranked against? You've ranked against the son of the daughter of the Prophet. Has Hussein done any harm to you? Has he stolen from you? Has he lied to you? Has he committed an injustice against you? And they would every time be forced to say, well, no, actually, he hasn't. So then people would ask them, well, in that case, why are you killing him? Why are you attacking him? And people like Shimr or Harmala or Umar ibn Sa'ad, the crazies, if you like, within that camp, they would say that even if he's done nothing, we will still kill him because he is opposing our Khalif. And this is where what happens is, in Quran, Allah talks about an illness. He says in Surah Al-Baqarah, in the first few verses, he talks about people, certain grouping of people. He says, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. That in their hearts is an illness, and Allah increases that illness. So when we look at this ayah, and this is not I know it sounds a bit like a tangent, but it's not. It will all come back. When we look at this ayah, you look at it and it appears to you that Allah is actively increasing the misguidance for these people. So one might argue that goes against the justice of Allah. No, it doesn't, because what Allah does is when someone habitually, over and over and over, rejects the truth while professing to still be on it, while professing to still be with it, when they keep doing that, your heart becomes rusted. It becomes damaged. And Allah, through dua and all of these things, because all of us in our day-to-day lives, we come across situations where we get dust on our hearts. We live in societies which impose this on us. You walk outside, you're surrounded by haram for the most part. So Allah prevents the cleaning of the heart. He doesn't actively make it worse. He just prevents cleaning it. If that person was to turn around and try and clean their own heart, Allah would not stop them from doing it. But as long as that illness is in their hearts, then it will continue to increase until they actively make an effort to remedy themselves. Give me a salawat, please. So in light of that, we can see that the situation with someone like Nu'man bin Bashir was along the lines of this. He's not, like we've said, not necessarily a bad person, but he's someone who is not ready to be principled and stand for the truth. So Mukhtar, in speaking to him and explaining to him that actually, look, you're an Ansar, you're from the people who are companions of Rasulullah. Is it not shameful for you to be allied with someone like Yazid? Nu'man doesn't have that tawfiq of being able to reflect back on himself and say, actually, maybe I need to reform myself. Maybe I need to fix myself. The same was the case, unfortunately, with the people of Kufa who ranked against Imam al-Hussein. Like I said, when Imam al-Hussein, when all of the ashab, all of the family, including Qasim ibn al-Hassan, who we'll be discussing in the Musibah today, all said to these people that, look, why are you doing this? You are the ones who invited Imam Hussein to Kufa, and now you're ranked against him. This makes no sense. This is insanity. These people, their hearts had become so damaged that even now, today, in 2020, we are asking that Allah remove His mercy from such people. So now let's move back to Mukhtar. Now, after the events surrounding the martyrdom of Muslim bin Aqil, the arrest of Hani ibn Urwa, the attempt by Muslim to try and gather support for a revolution to liberate Hani ibn Urwa, and the pacification of the Banu Mizhaj, of course, by Qazi Shuray, and of course the idea of Sulaiman ibn Surad not realizing his responsibility, and as we said yesterday, saying, and over a few other days as well, that he said that, well, okay, you might be the representative of Imam Hussein, and you're saying we should make a rise to free Hani, but actually I'm going to wait for a fatwa from my Imam. I want my Imam to tell me directly. And, sometimes many of us, unfortunately, we do this. When we are told a particular ruling of our marja or the wali faqih, instead of accepting and carrying on and doing this activity or avoiding doing a particular activity, we instead will do whatever we can to avoid doing it. We will find whatever loophole we can possibly find. We will say, oh, well, we can't do this, it's not practical for us, it's not feasible. We'll find every excuse under the sun. This is the same, or very similar at the very least, to what Sulaiman ibn Surad did. And we'll hear more about Sulaiman ibn Surad and what happened to him later on. But this is an important lesson, another important lesson. And I'll keep making little diversions from the actual discussion of Mukhtar into these lessons, because like I've said, the whole point of this discussion of Mukhtar is not to give just a historical account, but rather to try and gain lessons from some of the events that took place in it. And at the same time, remember someone like Mukhtar, who did a huge service to Islam. Because it's even said that Imam Sajjad, alayhi salam, has said, never insult Mukhtar, never slander Mukhtar. Because after the events of Karbala, he was the first time that we actually stopped crying momentarily when he sent us the news and the information about the death of people like Harmala, people like Umar ibn Sa'ad, Shimr ibn Daljawshan. So, it's good to remember people like Mukhtar, especially, like I said, in history, until quite recently, unfortunately, Mukhtar was considered a maverick, is one of the terms that's been used. He was someone who was considered as someone who was power hungry, someone who was who said that Muhammad bin Hanafiya was the Mahdi, and we'll come to understanding why this theory came about. He's not the Mahdi. He himself has never claimed to be the Mahdi. And in order to understand the whole context, we have to first understand a little bit more, and also the fact that the word Mahdi has a meaning beyond being a title of Hadrat Baqiyatullah, Ruhi wa Arwahul Alameen li Turabi Maqtamihil Fida. Give us a salawat, please. So after all of the events that happened in Kufa regarding Muslim, Mukhtar, like I said, he was outside Kufa. Him and his companions, they were trying to garner support from the tribes outside Kufa. They were given this information from his contacts inside Kufa that this has happened. He heard about Habib ibn Madahir, Muslim bin Awsaja, leaving to go towards where Imam Hussein was. And like I said, no one really knew where he was. They just had a rough idea. And Mukhtar also sent people to try and go towards there and do whatever they could and give the information to Imam Hussein that Muslim has been killed, and also to provide whatever service that is needed over there, including if they need to, they become shaheed. So Mukhtar, he arrives back in Kufa and he's trying to mobilize very quietly under the radar. His aim is get the information to Imam Hussein, come back to Kufa, gather some resources, gather some people, try and turn some of the other tribes that have become weak, try and turn even Sulaiman ibn Surad to tell them, look, now that this has happened, that should never have happened, look, we have to go and help Imam Hussein. But before he had any chance to do anything, he arrived into Kufa and he was immediately arrested by the forces of, they came into his house and they took him away. They broke in, they knocked on his house, they pushed the door down, they did a lot of problems, and they arrested him and they took him to the palace of Kufa, where he was to be in a meeting, if you like, or an interrogation by Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Now, in this discussion between Mukhtar and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad talks very highly of his father. He said, and also the fact that Mukhtar had many mawali. Mawali in this context is a term which means associates, people who worked with him, people who were his friends, people who were close to him, people who were his allies, if you like. Um, and everyone knew that Mukhtar he had many non-Arab allies. He had Arab allies, of course. He was an Arab himself. But he also had non-Arab allies. And in the society at that time, there was a large amount of racism, real racism, where while Rasulullah had come along and put an end to this idea of Arab is superior to Ajam, or Ajam is superior to Arab, no. Rasulullah had come along and decimated that idea of like racial supremacy. And he had, further rubber stamped it by talking about Salman al-Farisi, salamullahi alayhi, and saying that Salmanu minna Ahl al-Bayt, that Salman, who is a Persian, he's known, Salman al-Farisi, it's in the name, he is the Persian. He is from Ahlul Bayt. So the idea of Salman or racism being a factor within valid, true Islam is erroneous, it's invalid. But unfortunately, among people's memories, like we've discussed, are like goldfish. We remember things for a few days and then we forget them and we go back to where we were. And, everything just sort of defaults back to the default state of being silly. So the people in Kufa had this racism in them. Not just in Kufa and, what is now known as Iraq, what is now known as Arabia. There was a lot of this racism where the Furs, where the Persians were considered lower. And then people were considered high or low or whatever, depending on the tribal background that they had. Someone from a poorer tribe was considered less than someone from a powerful tribe. Mukhtar was considered, among the elites because his tribe was a powerful tribe. Suleiman was also from a powerful tribe. But I'm not going to get into a big discussion about tribalism and all of this in Arabia. Suffice it to say that this issue of racism and looking down upon those who are not Arab was a problem, was a thing in that part of the world. So Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is saying that, look, we know that the only people you've got with you are a handful of Arab renegades, is the term used, and you have some Furs. And the Furs, look, they are nothing to us. We treat them like garbage. We don't care anything about them. Killing them is not a problem. Killing these Arabs is nothing for us. It's not, these are not important people for us. But you, we kind of, we want you, we recognize you. We know your father was someone who was involved in the conquest of Persia, and yet, we conquered these Furs. We broke the back of the Persian Empire at that time, and that you're turning around and making alliances with them, and you want to help the all of these people, and you want to make problems for yourself and for us in Kufa. Why don't you just stay in Kufa nicely, and everything will be good? So Mukhtar told him very clearly that you want me to sit down nicely, and I'm paraphrasing. Please don't say that Shabbir is quoting these dialogues. I'm compressing lengthy conversations into very, very small dialogues. So please give me a loud salawat and we continue. So Mukhtar, he says to Ubaidullah that, look, the truth is well known. You know the truth. I know the truth. Everyone knows the truth. The truth is that Yazid is not fit to be on this position, and neither are you. Now, what are you going to do with me? You've brought me into this thing. I will leave. I don't need to be here with you. So he says, well, you're in chains. He said, these chains are nothing. We can still leave. So at that point, Ubaidullah gets angry and he smashes Mukhtar across the face. And he has a dagger in his hand. And so Mukhtar's eye is cut from the bottom over here to here, his eye was cut. And this is one of the how do I say? It's one of the things that people remember about Mukhtar. You find this a lot in the books of riwayat, and it says that one of the people who was very close to Mukhtar later on was the son of Malik Ashtar, who was, of course, the right-hand man of Imam Ali. And Malik Ashtar was known to have a scar in his left eye. And Ibrahim saw Mukhtar with the scar, and he was reminded of his father, as were many other people. That was a very small digression to a future time that we'll be discussing in the coming days. So Mukhtar, of course, he's tortured, beaten, shall we say, and he's immediately imprisoned. While he is in prison, the actual event of Ashura happens. So during these nights in 61 AH, Mukhtar was in prison. Now, some people had asked that, some people, when they don't know the whole issue with Mukhtar, they don't know the whole story, they say, well, Mukhtar was like the Tawabun. He, abandoned Imam Hussein and then felt bad. And so that's why he made his rise. No, Mukhtar he actually came back home to prepare to go to Karbala. But Allah had a greater plan for him. There was a maslaha, a reason, a divine reason why he was incarcerated and unable to be in Karbala. Because Karbala had to happen and happened as it happened. And Karbala is an eternal lesson, and with infinite smaller lessons within it about how to be. And actually, the whole lesson of Mukhtar is integral to Karbala. It's part of the Karbala lesson, but unfortunately, people don't always remember it. So Mukhtar is in prison, and while in prison, of course, his wound is they've not given him any doctor or any medicine or anything. So his wound is getting more and more infected and damaged. Of course, it does. Wounds generally they will heal themselves, but they will get bad before they get better. So he's unwell, shall we say, and he's also stressed. He's nervous because there is the issue of his family, and more than his family, he doesn't know what's happened to Imam al-Hussein. He doesn't know if Imam Hussein got the information that Muslim has been martyred and that Kufa is not safe, that Ubaidullah has arrived in Kufa and he's ruling it with an iron fist. He also knew that the people of Kufa are unreliable. While their tongues might be with Imam Hussein, their hearts are not with him. And we have to now, about this particular point, we have to ask ourselves, our tongues are with Imam al-Mahdi Ajalla Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, but are our hearts and our metaphorical swords with him? When Imam Mahdi comes, things are not going to be just very, very easy. He's not just going to come along and say, Ya Allah, come on, Ya Jama'ah, we'll go and sing Kumbaya around the mulberry bush. This is not how it's going to work. There's going to be difficulty. There's going to be difficult decisions made. Decisions that will impact all of us. And decisions where we will have to actually take a stance alongside the Imam. And we have to understand that we really need to make sure that we are aware of this. Otherwise, the danger is, and this is a danger I cannot emphasize enough, the danger is that we will become the people of Kufa without realizing it. And this links back to the second ayah in our bracket, in our subject actually, which is قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. That shall I inform you, or Allah is saying, shall we inform you of the greatest losers in their works? الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. They think they're doing very great works, but unfortunately, they are so misguided, they don't realize. And this is the same concept is there for other people within. And again, when I say other people, I first look at ourselves. And in any situation, when there is a discussion about activities and habits and negative or positive traits of people, we should never first look at someone else and say, ooh, yes, that Muhammad, he has that quality. Oh, ooh, that Fatima has that quality. No, we first look at ourselves. I should first be saying that, okay, that particular quality, first, it's actually, I have it. It's a problem. I need to remedy myself. So we should always be very, very careful about this. So anyway, let's come back to the discussion, because if I keep tangenting, wallahi, time will really get ahead of ourselves, and we only really have until Friday. So we have tomorrow and Friday really to finish this subject. So give me a salawat. Okay. So Karbala happens. Mukhtar is unaware of it. And then, amongst the guards, they begin to hear that, this has happened, this has happened. Someone called Maythamet Hammar, who was a companion of Rasulullah, a companion of Imam Ali, and Abdullah bin Afif, who is also another companion of Imam Ali and of Rasulullah, they are arrested and they are brought into the prison. Now, Maytham is first put in a different part of the prison, but Abdullah bin Afif is brought into the same cell as Mukhtar. And I'll give you a little bit of background on who these people are. Maythamet Hammar is a very special companion of Imam Ali. He was someone who was a real mu'min, real mukhlis person, real believing person. And he's someone who would never be silent in the face of taghut, in the face of an injustice. He was someone who was constantly with Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra after the passing of Rasulullah, and he stayed loyal to them. He was aware of the situation when, following the passing of Rasulullah and the start of the Khilafah of the first Khalif, Abu Bakr, Abu Sufyan had actually come to Imam Ali, and this is also an important lesson that maybe not everyone knows. Imam Ali was, the Khilafah had already, Abu Bakr was already the Khalif of the Muslims. The Prophet had very, very recently passed away. Ahlul Bayt was still in mourning. Muslims were still in mourning, really. And one fine day, Abu Sufyan, the father of Muawiyah, the grandfather of Yazid, who had said he has become Muslim at the point of the conquest of Mecca, he came to Imam Ali and he said, Ya Abul Hassan, your right has been stolen. Imam Ali said nothing. He said, Oh Abul Hassan, I want to recover your right. Imam Ali said nothing. He then said, Ya Abul Hassan, I will fill the alleys of Medina with the youth of Quraysh in order to obtain your right back for you. Do you know what Imam Ali said to him? Get out of here, Iblis. We've all discussed earlier on who is Iblis. Iblis is the original name of Shaitan. Imam Ali is telling this person, Abu Sufyan, who is saying to Imam Ali that, look, Imam Ali, I care about your rights. I want to recover your rights. But Imam Ali is saying, get out of here, Iblis. We should think about this. We should think about this. Because Imam Ali's first priority was to ensure the safety and the consistency and the protection of the Muslim community. And we also have to understand that, yes, while we as Shia believe Imam Ali should have been the first Khalif, we know that Imam Ali was the first Imam. Whether he had the temporal position of power or he didn't is neither here nor there. He was the first Imam. Fact. No one can take this away from him. And he also assisted and supported and helped the first Khalif, Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalif, and he even sent Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas to defend the third Khalif, Uthman bin Affan, when the forces of Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan, had conspired and gotten right inside his government and were making conspiracies to kill him. And according to some riwayat, some youngsters from the Ahlul Bayt, some shabab, some youth from Ahlul Bayt were injured in the standoffs that occurred by the Muawiyah people, by the Umayyads, who were trying to manipulate Uthman bin Affan. We should remember this when we get into, quote, Shia Sunni discussions, because Shia Sunni discussions are not relevant. They are not important, and we should avoid them. Academic discussions, definitely, by all means, but they should always be done in a respectful, honorable fashion, without any, even the mildest of defamation, insult, even speaking badly about any of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, the first four Khulafa, any of the wives of the Prophet. This is something that not only Sharir is not saying. Imam Khamenei has said it. Ayatollah Sistani has said it. Ayatollah Makarim has said it. Sayyid Hassan has said it, narrating from Imam Khamenei. And Imam Ali has done it. So if we profess to follow Imam Ali, we have to follow this pathway as well, and not promote this sectarian insanity that really will cause problems, and did cause problems in Kufa. And in fact, it was one of the things that was used by the enemy, by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, to rally people against Mukhtar, to rally people against Imam al-Hussein. They use this whole sectarian mentality to do the same thing. And today, in our time, we can see the same games are being played, where you're told such and such group or such and such country is a Shia country, and this other one is a Sunni country, and so they will perpetually be at war. Habibi, no, it's not like this. It's not like this. There is those people who are with Allah, those people who are with Shaitan. One of the sayings we have about Karbala is that this was Karbala, the event of Ashura was the pinnacle of the battle between Hizbullah and Nujaba, yani the party of God, the honorable party of God. And this was said by Sayyid Zainab in her khutbah in, I believe, Damascus. And Hizb al-Shaytan. She's saying that Karbala, the epic of Karbala, was the pinnacle of the battle between Hezbollah and Hizb al-Shaytan. And we should remember this. We should think about this. We should avoid letting ourselves be those people who, whenever we hear this word Hezbollah, we immediately just think of our brothers in Lebanon. Because this is what happens with many people. Hezbollah is a term used in Quran. Whether we have brothers in Lebanon who have this name for the organization, this is a secondary matter. Hezbollah is a term in Quran. It is for people who are sincere to Allah, who genuinely hold fast to that trust of Allah. People like Mukhtar, who go through great tribulations, are from the people who are with Hezbollah, who are part of Hezbollah. In Sahifat al-Sajjadiyya, like we mentioned briefly yesterday, which is one of the ways of jihad that Imam Sajjad did while he was essentially under house arrest by the Zubairis in Mecca, that we will come to shortly. This has du'as which constantly say, Allahumma ij'alna min hizbika fa inna hizbaka humul muflihun. Ya Allah, please count us within your hizb, within your party, because your party is the successful ones. We have to work hard to make sure that the media propaganda against us doesn't put us in a position where we become frightened of Islam and we begin to compromise our Islam. Because today it's terms. Tomorrow it will be the hijab, and it will be the hijab. Even though, subhanAllah, they plan, Allah plans. And now, even someone like a person in where I am, who said that those sisters who wear the Islamic headscarf are like, he called them letterboxes. He is being forced to wear a face mask. and they are saying that wearing a face mask and head covering is actually more hygienic. These are the games. These are the games they try and play against Allah, and Allah plays back. So we should remember these. And these are important points for us to reflect on. So anyway, moving very swiftly. Give me a salawat, please. So inside the prison, you have Abdullah bin Afif, and you have Maytham Tammar, and you have Mukhtar. Abdullah bin Afif is blind. So he's inside the prison cell with Mukhtar, but he doesn't know he's with Mukhtar. He of course knows Mukhtar. He was a famous person from Kufa, and Mukhtar was also a famous person in terms of fame as in connection to Rasulullah. So bin Afif is upset and he's crying and he's saying, "Woe unto me that I was unable to be with the caravan of love." Mukhtar hears this and tries to get information from him. When bin Afif realizes that Mukhtar is the one who is sharing a cell with, he then realizes that this is what happened to Mukhtar, because he says that, "Look, I thought that you were with the caravan of love." He said, "What do you mean? What's happened to the caravan of love?" And then Mukhtar hears what has happened in Karbala. He hears that this has happened. And Mukhtar becomes extremely depressed, extremely sad. And he vows that he needs to do something to take that revenge, to avenge that pure blood, to do something to bring about justice. He has this fire. And one of the quotes that he says that, "Ya Allah, even if you don't give me anything on the next day, just give me the opportunity to take revenge for what they did to Imam al-Hussein." This is the love of the free man. This is the worship of someone who is free, who is worshipping Allah for the sake of Allah, because he knows that Allah is worthy of worship. And this is something important for us to understand. Very quickly, there are three types of belief. The first type of belief is that of the slave. And this is the type of belief where someone does the first type of belief is the belief of the businessman, the trader, where someone, he prays because he's going to get this much reward. He does this other activity because he's going to get this much reward. He does this third activity, and he's almost keeping an account, that he's going to put in his grave and show to Allah, say, "Ya Allah, I did all of this good stuff. Here, this is my account." This is the belief of the businessman. You then have the belief of someone who is frightened of the punishment. So this person diligently does his wajibat, does whatever he can, because he doesn't want to be punished. He doesn't want that fire to come anywhere near him. When he reads Dua Kumail, he becomes even more scared. When he says in Dua Kumail that how can the fire, this fire is a result of your anger and your displeasure at someone who has wantonly committed crimes against you, has gone against your command. So this is the belief, and this is the worship of the slave. But the free person doesn't really mind if he gets anything from Allah or doesn't get anything. He doesn't really concern himself even with the punishment. Rather, he worships Allah because Allah is Allah. He is someone worthy of worship. And this is that real belief that we should all be developing. That's not to say the belief of the trader or the businessman or the belief of the slave is bad. Allah should accept from each and every one of us to our own abilities. But we should all aspire to try and have our belief be such that it is the belief of the free person. Because when you're a free person, you can be like Mukhtar, where you're inside prison, you're beaten, your eye is infected. No one can get any medicine to you to cure this. But still, your entire purpose is to work for Allah, to ensure the name of Allah is the Most High, and to ensure that justice is served upon those people who literally shed the blood of God. One of the titles that we give in Farsi to Imam Hussein is Khun-e Khuda, the blood of Allah. course, Allah has no blood. Allah is not physical, tangible, but it's a metaphorical title to show that how serious the crime that was done in Karbala was. So then Mukhtar, when he understands all of this from Abdullah bin Afif was then released for whatever reason, and then he was killed later on inside his own house. But Mukhtar is alone, and he gets a visit from Maytham Hammar. Now, there are two opinions on how this visit happened. Post Karbala, Maytham Hammar created a revolution within the prison. And they raised the cry of Ya Mansurun Amit, which basically means the one who helps, in the name of the one who helps, something like this. It's difficult to translate that exactly. And this was a cry in support of Abu Abdullah, in support of the oppressed, in support of the Sabaya, because remember, the family of Ahlul Bayt were paraded through the streets of Kufa and Sham. And so Maytham, on hearing about this, he raised a revolution, a minor revolution inside the prison of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa. And the revolution was swiftly put down. Many people were killed. And this was one of two revolutions that Maytham brought about. But at the end of this revolution, Maytham was thrown in the same cell as Mukhtar, because Mukhtar didn't actually get involved in this revolution. What Mukhtar had done and what he was waiting for is he had written a letter. If you remember, I had said that in Mecca, there was Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of the second Khalif of the Muslims, Umar ibn al-Khattab. Abdullah ibn Umar was married to the elder sister of Mukhtar. Mukhtar had arranged through one of the guards that he could pass messages through, of course, for money. Everything happens for money. He had arranged for a letter to be sent to Abdullah bin Umar, which would ask him to intercede on Mukhtar's behalf to Yazid and get him freed. Say that, basically to say that Mukhtar had nothing to do with the rise of Muslim inside Kufa, which was actually true. He didn't. He wasn't even in Kufa at the time. He was incarcerated on false reasons, from false testimonies and everything, which unfortunately in these days has become very common in such political situations. But moving on swiftly. So Mukhtar is waiting for this letter. In the meantime, Maytham comes along, and Maytham is pretty battered. He's pretty harshly beaten. He's sitting there, he's looking, and Maytham always was someone, in the books it even says, he always smiled. He was always filled with that love of Allah. And he looks at Mukhtar when his eyes begin to finally sort of focus, and he says, "Is that you, Mukhtar?" And he says, "Yes." And he says, "Mukhtar, why are you looking so angry?" And Mukhtar tells him why he's angry, that he wants to avenge the blood that was shed in Karbala. Maytham goes very quiet for a while. And he says, Mukhtar, I'm going to finish with this point before we go to the musibah. He says that, "Oh Mukhtar, I know for sure, because I can see that you will kill Ibn Marjana." Ibn Marjana was a derogatory term for Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. I'm not going to go into how it was a derogatory term, but suffice it to say, it was a derogatory term. It was insulting. We'll leave it at that for now. You will kill Ibn Marjana, and you will trample his face with your feet. But at that time, be very, very careful, Mukhtar, because you will be a hair's width away from the pits of hell. Be wary at that time. And the reason for this was doing something like the activity of killing Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad or Shimr bin Diljawshan or Umar ibn Sa'ad and avenging the killers of Ahlul Bayt. This is a big deal. And like we've said over these past few days, Shaitan is looking constantly for an attack vector. So imagine Mukhtar does this activity and he gets that slightest taste of arrogance. slightest taste of arrogance where he thinks, I have done anything, at that point, all of the good work he has done, it's finished, it's gone. Instead, he needs to accept and know that this activity, this killing of Umar ibn Sa'ad or Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad or Shemar or whoever, this is only because Allah gave tawfiq to Mukhtar to achieve this. Always make sure that when you think you have done something, reference it back to Allah. And not just reference it by tongue, genuinely understand that actually, had Allah not given you this, you would have nothing. You know, we have in Dua al-Iftitah, even in the Quran, we have a famous ayah, Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. That all praise belongs to Allah who has guided us to this. And had He not guided us, we would not have been guided. So we have to think about these type of ideas. I really wish I could continue, but we've already reached the time of musibah. And today is a very, very sad, very heavy musibah. So I'd like to give me a loud salawat, and then we continue. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. My dear brothers and sisters, it is the night of Ashura. You can see all of the companions and family gathered together. I want you to take yourself there like a bird flying over the plain of Karbala. You look down, you see the tents, and you keep seeing a young boy. You see a young boy going from one tent to another and then back to the other tent. And he's constantly like he's doing sa'i, like he's doing tawaf between one tent and the other. And you ask yourself, who is this boy? You ask yourself, who is this boy? This boy is Qasim ibn al-Hassan. He is the 14 or 15-year-old son of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, the brother of Imam al-Hussein, the nephew of Imam al-Hussein. This boy is going to the tent of Imam al-Hussein from his own family's tent, from the tent of his mother. And he goes and he asks permission from Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein says to him, go and ask Sayyid Zainab. Sayyid Zainab says, go and ask your mother. Your mother says, go and ask Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The boy is getting upset. He goes to the Imam once more and he insists, and the Imam says, how can I give you permission? You are the memory of my beloved brother Hassan al-Mujtaba. How can I let you go? It's now the morning of Ashura, and the beginning of the battle has happened, and some of the companions have already started making their resistance and making their stance. Companions have fallen and gone into the love of Allah. And Qasim ibn al-Hassan is seeing all of this. He's got tears coming down his eyes. His little throat is dry. He keeps going to his mother and saying, please, mother, will you intercede for me? Please, said Zainab, will you intercede for me? My master Imam al-Hussein is not letting me go. I can't go without his permission. Finally, his mother becomes really sad. She sees the yearning in her son's eyes, and she remembers something Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba had given her. Imam Hassan had given her a letter and told her that a time will come on Hussein when he needs Qasim. At that time, Hussein will not accept Qasim. Give Qasim this letter and tell him to give it to Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein is given the letter by Qasim, and the letter is a request from his brother Imam al-Hassan that consider Qasim my representative, so you have to let him go into the battlefield. Imam Hussein has got tears coming down his eyes, and he's seeing Qasim, and he nods, and Qasim's face lights up. He becomes happy. Imam al-Hussein looks at Qasim and he says, Ya Qasim, O son of my brother, how do you see death? What do you understand by this shahada? Qasim looks at him without any hesitation, without any doubt. He says, Aghla min al-asal. This is more beautiful than honey. Imam al-Hussein cries, he hugs the boy, and he takes him to the camp of Sayyid Zainab and Farwa, his mother. And they say, right, okay, we have to prepare this boy. They give him armor. Abul Fadl Abbas comes along. Imam Ali al-Akbar comes. They all help him. And Qasim ibn al-Hassan is taken to the front. He goes to the battlefield. And remember, this is still while he is young. All of the Hashimi men, all of the Hashimi youth, they were trained to fight from youngsters. These are Arabs, these are Muslims. They are trained to fight with spears and swords and arrows from a very young age. Ajrukum ala Allah. Qasim goes into the battlefield and he's fighting valiantly. Of course, he is the son of Al-Hassan. He is the grandson of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He is the grandson of the one who lifted the door of Khaybar. He is someone who can destroy many of these enemies. Again, like with other situations, Shimr bin Dil Jawshan, Umar ibn Sa'ad, may Allah curse them. They say that if we continue to allow this boy to come forward, he will rub through us like a hot knife through butter. So we have to do something to stop him. And this is a young boy. Some riwayat say he was 14, some say he was 15, some say as young as 13. He is fighting, and instead of allowing him to fight one-on-one, they get him surrounded by horsemen, not even soldiers on their feet, not even infantry, but horsemen. And the horsemen with their maces begin to make paths around him and smash him from one side to the other side to the third side. Qasim is still valiantly trying to do his best, but how much can someone do in the face of such violence? Qasim falls to the ground and he says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Imam Hussein is looking from the camp. Abul Fadl al-Abbas is looking from the camp. They attempt to get closer, but the enemy is not done with Qasim yet. The enemy is not done with Qasim yet. They want to show Imam al-Hussein the brutality of this regime of Yazid. They not only make sure Qasim is unconscious on the ground, but they then set their horses loose over him so that he is torn, irban, he's torn into shreds. And there is very little left of him that is together. As the dust settles, Imam Hussein goes over there and he hugs what remains of Qasim. And he says, Ya Allah, please accept from us this qurban. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridhan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Ya Allah, please accept our small ibadat, our small azah. Ya Allah, please make it a source of happiness, a source of like an ointment for Abu Abdullah, for Fatima al-Zahra, for Rasulullah, and for Imam al-Hujjah. Ya Allah, please give us the wisdom and the understanding and the basira of Qasim ibn al-Hassan and of all of the shuhada of Karbala that we can move forward correctly. Ya Allah, please protect Islam and Muslimin. Ya Allah, please destroy the enemies, the kuffar, the taghut, the munafiqeen. Ya Allah, please release and give sustenance and support to all of the righteous ulama who are incarcerated, like Shaykh Ibrahim Zakzaki, like Shaykh Ali Salman and others. Ya Allah, please protect all of the righteous believers. Ya Allah, please protect all of the righteous ulama. Please protect all of the righteous maraji, and especially the leader Imam Khamenei, and especially Imam al-Hujjah, and make us from those people who are a source of joy for him and who are honored to be from his companions. وآخر الدعوان الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.